In today's video, let's practice some sample questions for your PRINCE2 Foundation exam. Hi, I am Ray and I'm an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 Certification, and I have helped many aspiring project managers in their careers to become certified project managers. Now in this video today, we will be solving some medium to high difficulty level PRINCE2 Foundation exam questions, which will help you firstly to understand the genuine look and feel of the PRINCE2 Foundation level exam questions if you are planning to write the exam anytime soon, and secondly, if you are preparing for the PRINCE2 exam already, you might use today's session to assess how well you are prepared for the exam. So get a pen and a paper and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, please read the question and try to solve it before we take this together. Okay, so our team leader brings specific project stakeholders into a collaboration session with one clear goal, okay, which is to define detailed requirements for several project outputs. Now the question asks which PRINCE2 guiding principle this represents. So let's look at option B, manage by exception. Now if you think about it, manage by exception is all about setting tolerances and delegating authority between management levels, right? It's about empowering people to act within defined limits without constantly escalating upwards, okay? Now this, if you think about it, has nothing to do with exception management, right? No tolerances are being set here, no authority is being delegated, so this option is incorrect. Now let's look at option C, define roles, responsibilities and relationships. Now that might seem tempting on the surface because stakeholders are involved, right? But the principle of defining roles, responsibilities and relationships is about establishing who is accountable for what within the project management structure, specifically across the business, user and the supplier communities, okay? If you think about it, it is about the governance framework, and the scenario described here is not about clarifying who does what, right? It's about defining what the project needs to produce. So that is why option C is also an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D, tailor to suit the project. Now tailoring is about adapting PRINCE2 methods, controls and terminology to match the project size, complexity and the environment. Running a requirements workshop is not tailoring the method, right? It is just a standard good practice. So that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which is focus on products, because the project must be output oriented, not work oriented, right, in PRINCE2. And one of the most powerful ways to apply this principle is exactly what you see here, which is to get the right stakeholders in the room to collaborate to define the detailed requirements of the project's outputs, okay? And if you think about in a real life scenario, if you are building a new IT system, you have to think that before a single line of code is written, you should sit down with your users and document precisely what the system needs to do, right? So the correct answer to this question is option A, which is focus on products.
Next, let's move on to question number 2.
Right, so question number 2, please read the question and try to solve it before we take this together. Now the question describes a situation where active effort is being put into developing and maintaining the benefits management approach with the specific goal of monitoring the benefits effectively. So the question asks which PRINCE2 guiding principle this behavior does actually reflect, right? So let's walk through the options one by one. Now option A, focus on products. Now focus on products is all about defining what the project needs to deliver, the outputs, the product descriptions, the quality expectations, etc., right? It's about being output oriented rather than work oriented, as we discussed in the previous question. Now benefits, if you think about it, are not products, right? Because benefits are the measurable improvement that result after the project delivers its outputs, okay, which could be the products, okay? So that is why this option does not fit in this scenario. So option A is incorrect. Let's look at option B, defining roles, responsibilities and relationships. Now this might seem relevant because someone is clearly doing something, right? Someone is developing and maintaining a document, okay? But if you think about it, this principle is about establishing clear accountability structures across the business, the user, and the supplier communities, right? It is about who is responsible for what within the project management team. It is not specifically about benefits monitoring. So while roles around benefits management do exist in PRINCE2, that is not what the question is actually testing, okay? So that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option D, manage by exception. Now, manage by exception is about setting tolerances and delegating authority efficiently between management levels, right? Now, yes, benefits tolerance does exist in PRINCE2, but the act of developing and maintaining a benefits management approach goes far beyond exception handling, okay? This is a much broader ongoing commitment to the business justification. So that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is to ensure continued business justification, okay? Because think about it this way, why does a project exist in the first place, right? It is to deliver benefits to the business, as simple as that. And PRINCE2 is very clear that the justification must remain valid throughout the project life cycle and not just at the start. The benefits management approach is the formal mechanism that makes this happen. It defines how benefits will be measured, when they will be reviewed, and who is accountable for them. And that is exactly benefits management approach in action, and it is purely to ensure continued business justification. So the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you are enjoying the session, right? Please press the like button if that's the case, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel Project Mastery with Ray if you wish to view more of such educational content. And now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so question number 3, please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. So this is a definition-based question testing your knowledge on the 3 primary stakeholder groups in the PRINCE2 overall framework, which are the business, the user, and the supplier, right? So each has a very, very specific definition in the manual, and the question asks you to correctly identify the definition of a user, okay? So let's walk through the options one by one. Option A, the organization that provides the expertise, people, and resources required to deliver the products required by the project. Now, if you think about it, who brings the skills and the resources to actually build the thing, right? That is the supplier, right? An IT consultancy brought in to develop a new software platform, or maybe a construction firm bought in to build a facility, okay? So they are the ones providing the expertise and the resources, okay? And this is a supplier definition, not a user definition. So that is why option A is incorrect. Let's look at option B. Where there is a commercial relationship between the business and the supplier, the business is regarded as the client. Now, this one is actually the definition of a customer in PRINCE2. Okay, so when a commercial arrangement exists between the business commissioning the project and the external supplier delivering it, the business takes on the role of the customer. Okay, nothing wrong with the statement itself, but it has nothing to do with the user. Okay, so that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option C. The organization that provides the project mandate and structure within which the project is governed. Now, if you really think about it, who provides the mandate and the governance structure, right? That is the business, okay? The business is the one with the strategic objectives, the funding, and the authority to commission the project in its first place itself, okay? Again, a perfectly valid PRINCE2 definition, but it is the definition of the business, not the user. So the correct answer to this question is option D, which is the organization that will use the project products to enable it to gather the expected benefits. Okay, and that's really spot on, because the user is the one who actually puts the project's outputs to work. They are the end recipients, right? So think about a hospital commissioning a new patient record system, for example. Okay, the clinical staff who will log in every day and use that system to manage the data and manage that data to eventually manage patient care, they are the users, right? The benefits of the product, whether positive or negative, will be coming to them in the end, okay? And that is the connection between the product and the user, okay? And that is why option D is the correct answer choice to this question.
Right, next, question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. So this question is testing your understanding on the manage by stages principle, right? Not what the stages are, but the principle which actually governs this entire principle of managing by stages. So let's look at the options one by one. Option A, A project should have distinct stages for planning, delivery, and closure. Right, now that might seem reasonable, and honestly, it's a very common misconception within PRINCE2, right? Because PRINCE2 does not prescribe specific stage names or a fixed structure of planning, delivery, and closure. Okay, what it actually says is that every project must have at least two stages, an initiation stage and at least one further delivery stage. That's it. Beyond that, the number and the nature of the stages depends on the project size, complexity, and risk profile. Okay, so option A, if you think about it, is imposing a rigid structure that the PRINCE2 does not simply mandate, and that is why it is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option B. A project should have fewer extended stages when facing high risk exposure. Now, if you think about it carefully, this is actually the opposite of what PRINCE2 recommends. The manual is very clear on this, right? Shorter stages offer more control and minimize risk exposure, okay? And that is one of the key factors in determining how to divide a project into stages. So when risk is high, you want more frequent review points, which means shorter stages and not longer ones, okay? So fewer extended stages in a high risk environment is not something ideal within PRINCE2, and that is why option B is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D. The project board should authorize several stages simultaneously. Now this is actually contradicting the manual straight away, okay? Because PRINCE2 is very explicit on this point. The project board authorizes one stage at a time and only proceeds to the next stage if the continued business justification exists. Authorizing several stages in one go would completely undermine the control mechanism that manage by stages is designed to provide, okay? And that is why option D is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is the conclusion of a stage should serve as a control point for the project board, okay? And this is exactly what we were looking for. The whole purpose of dividing a project into stages is to create structured moments where the project board steps back, reviews how the current stage went, checks whether the business case still holds up, and then makes informed decision about whether to authorize the next stage. So the end of a stage is not a administrative milestone, okay? It is a deliberate governance driven control point, and that is precisely why correct answer to this question is option C.
And finally, question number 5. I hope you are taking notes, okay? Because I'm sure that you are learning something new at least as part of your PRINCE2 exam preparation as part of today's session, right?
So the final question, guys, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it before we solve this together. So the project in this question has closed, right? The team has been disbanded, but now someone is going back and checking whether the benefits that the project promised have actually come through or not, okay? So the question asks which PRINCE2 principle governs this post-project activity. So let's look at the options one by one. Option B, manage by stages. Now manage by stages is about planning, monitoring and controlling the project on a stage-by-stage basis within the project life cycle. Stage boundaries, stage plans, authorizing the next stage, etc. etc. Okay, all of that lives inside the project. Once the project is closed, there are no more stages to manage, right? So that is why option B is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option C. Define roles, responsibilities, and relationships. Okay, so this one is about establishing clear governance and accountability structures across the business, the user, and the supplier communities during the project. Now, while it's true that the senior user carries accountability for confirming benefits even after closure, however, the act of reviewing whether the benefits have been realized is not an exercise in defining the roles, okay? The roles were already defined at the beginning of the project, which is during the initiation stages of the project. So that is why option C is incorrect. Now let's look at option D, learn from experience. Now this one is a bit of a tricky one, okay? And I can understand that why some of you might be selecting this answer choice. Post-project reviews do generate lessons, okay? I'm not doubting that. And those lessons absolutely need to feed into the future projects. But look carefully what the question is actually asking, right? Seeing whether the benefits have been realized or not. Now, this is not a lessons exercise. That is a benefits confirmation exercise, okay? The purpose is to check the return on investments and not to capture the knowledge for future projects, okay? And that is why option D is an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option A, which is to ensure continued business justification. And here is what it is very important for you to understand, okay? The ensure continued business justification principle does not stop when the project closes, okay? Very, very important. It extends into the post-project phase. So PRINCE2 describes the business case management procedure in 4 steps. So first you develop, then you check, then you maintain, and then you confirm, right? So please go back to your PRINCE2 manuals and study these 4 stages of business case management, okay? Because that is actually the crux which will help you to understand that why this principle of ensure continued business justification even continues after the projects have closed, and links very, very closely to assess that whether the benefits of the project had been realized or not. So that is why the correct answer to this question is option A.
I hope you found the session helpful. In case you are planning to prepare for the PRINCE2 exam and you wish to enroll in one of my training programs, please drop me an email and one of my team members will definitely reach out to you. I am Ray, an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 by PRINCE2 Cert, and I look forward to meet you again in the next video.